I watched my 3-year-old granddaughter this weekend at a playground in Winchester. Their playgrounds are better than ours, so I crossed the town lines and go over to Winchester. I watched my 3-year-old granddaughter who lives in rural New Hampshire and doesn't have anything like a playground like that. Circle and circle and circle, and then eventually, of course, make a connection and then work it out. First with a younger girl because that was safer, and then with an older girl because that was safer, and then finally someone her own age. Took about 2 hours. And the impulse always to, intervene, introduce them to each other, do stuff. But you're best if you just sit and wait. And she wasn't looking over her shoulder for me to help her. She was out there dealing with her anxiety, which is at times was evident. But all kids are doing that. She's 3 and she's focused on her social world. So wouldn't it be great if every child made a friend, every child maintained a friendship, and everything, if every child had a friend in school, I'd have a lot less work, actually. And school psychologists and social workers and counselors. And teachers would have a lot less worries. But before I talk about kids with special difficulties in this area, let me talk about what afflicts every child between 4th and 9th grade. So I said the children at Stratton yesterday, I said there's something that comes into your lives in 4th grade. It's sort of the snake in the garden. And I call that thing popularity. What's popularity? Someone defined popularity for me. So a boy got up and he defined popularity as you're cool. And I said, what makes you cool? He said, I don't know. Apparently he hadn't achieved it. But I had a 7th grade boy at a Catholic school in Cleveland, a very confident boy. I said, what's popularity? And he said, that's if you're cool. And I said, well, who decides if you're cool? He said, the kids with style. I said, who picks the kids with style? And he said, well, the popular kids. I was at President Obama's old school in Honolulu. I asked what was popularity, and a 7th grade boy got up and said, it's the food chain. And I had a 5th grade girl right in front of me who threw her head into her hands and went, I can see it. Presumably the fish, I was at the Marblehead Public Schools with 700 middle schoolers. I said, what's popularity? And an 8th grade boy had gotten a lot of his growth, a deep voice, got up and said, it's when you can tease people and they cannot tease you back. I've had girls define popularity as a secret election. An 8th grade girl said it's an invisible list. Right? This is harsh. What's popularity? 6th grade girls say, oh, that's if you're nice. So I say, so the popular kids are the nicest kids. And they go, no. I said, well, try again. What's popularity? Well, that's if you have the most friends. I said, why do you have the most friends? Because you're nice. I said, so the nicest kids are the popular. No. By that time, the other girl's shouting, no, you start out nice, but after you get the most friends, you're not nice anymore. They learned this because it was there to be learned. I was down in San Antonio, Texas, as a northerner. I'm fascinated by the variety of southern accents I hear. So I was down in San Antonio, and a girl said, I said, what's popularity? She said, that's if you're nice, unless, of course, you're mean. I said, what do you mean? She said, there's nice popular and there's mean popular. Everywhere I go, girls start to say it's a form of power. And some girls, a girl yesterday at Stratton said, popularity is if you're really good at teasing. And then you get the most kids around you. And I said, why? And she said, because everybody's afraid of being teased. Okay? Is this bringing middle school back to you? So at any rate, what I know is that kids come into conflict with each other because some of them seem to have attractive traits that the group agrees on. And psychologists define friendship as something intimate, affectionate, something reliable between two people. Can be extended to a wider friendship circle, but friendship starts with a dyad. Popularity is the group's consensus that you have some attractive traits. For boys, athletic ability, always at the top. Adults often can't guess what it is next for boys. It's height and build, as every short boy knows. Because I was talking to 300 middle schoolers at the American school in Dubai last year. And I was saying height and build matter, that taller boys get more leadership opportunities. They get more attention. And the 299 kids swung around and looked at one teeny tiny 7th grade boy. They're remarkably small 7th grade boy. And they all turned to look at him. It's the kind of thing you'd like to have stopped, but it just happened. I said, as every short boy knows, and everybody looked at him. And he looked back and he said, "Oh, nice. Everybody look at the little kid." Everybody laughed. He knows what boys know, which is humor, right? It's athletic ability and size and humor. And size does matter for boys. Dan and I wrote about it in Raising Cain. But so does humor. I had a 4th grade boy in California. I said, "What's friendship?" And he said, "Your friends are funny." And I said, do you give them like a test? And he said, "No, it just works out that way." But I know the research. And kids at 3 and 3.5 start to tease each other. And kids who can take a little teasing and come back with some humorous response get more friendship offers than kids who always run to adults, who have a meltdown and always run to be protected. So one of the things about our fears about bullying is that we're always advising children to tell adults, tell adults, tell adults. And of course, that's not a great strategy. It's a strategy that makes us feel helpful. It makes us feel more powerful and like we're doing what we should. And it is harder to arm your child. I had a mother come up to me at one school and she said, "Oh, Dr. Thompson, I have to talk to you. My daughter's being bullied." And I said, my first question always is, "How old is your child?" Because I can't see the case unless I know that. She said 6. And I said, "How's she being bullied?" She said, "Someone on the playground called her an idiot." I said, "Is your daughter an only child?" And she said, "Yes." "How did you know?" And I said, "Well, if she had a brother or sister, she would have been called an idiot many times, and it might not be as alarming, right? But for only a 6-year-old only child being called a name that no one has ever called her at home, that can be startling. So you have to, how much practice have they had? Well, only children get very good in school, and they love it. And they love the society, and they master it. But it takes practice. It doesn't happen right away. I once gave a talk in Atlanta, and I got a call over the next few days from a physician in Atlanta who was frantic. And I finally talked to him. We had this 4 or 5 exchanges. And he said, your talk made me really anxious because you said it was important that every child have a friend. And my daughter doesn't have a friend. And I said, "How old is your daughter?" And he said, 4.5. I said, "Don't worry. She's getting the lay of the land here in pre-K, right? She doesn't have to have the guaranteed best friend forever." I've seen entire kindergartens go up in smoke because there are a couple of moms who think that their child must have a best friend forever and idealize their child's and romanticize their child's friendship. And there are a couple of couples in kindergarten. There are some kids who just really adore each other. But if their moms trumpet it too much, the other parents get competitive. And they go, "My child hasn't had it." And then they say, then the parents are always saying, do you have a best friend? You know? And when the child then doesn't think they have a best friend in a way that will satisfy the parent, But this is developmentally early. You know, not all children, actually many boys want a gang, not a best friend. And boys who have a very best friend often by 5th or 6th grade don't want to talk about it that way, even though it's quite clear. But they don't advertise it that way, but are trying to make children fit into a mold of their friendship. This is a journey that they're exploring. Now, John Cooey and Ken Dodge, Cooey's now retired from Duke, but they looked at popularity, and it does in fact affect your friendship opportunities. They found, by going to hundreds of classrooms and assessing popularity, that about 15% of a class is very popular. Do you know how this is the simplest research, it's just painful research. How do you figure out who's the most popular kid in class? You just pass out a piece of paper and say, who are the kids you'd most like to play with, most like to be your friend, and you just count up the votes. It's proportional voting. And there's some kids who get a ton of votes, and there's some kids who get no votes. You can ask it the other way, who's unpopular. And then you sort of get a reverse profile. You can put those things together, and you can see it's a kind of a social X-ray of the class. 15% of kids are very popular. 45% of kids are accepted. Once, when I was writing Best Friends, Worst Enemies, I asked my nephew, John, who was in a big public high school in West Des Moines, Iowa. I told him the categories, very popular, accepted. And I said, where do you think you are? And he said, I think I'm accepted. I said, well, how do you know that? How do you evaluate you? He said, the very popular kids talk to me, but they'd never invite me over. Right? So he had some assessment. Then about a 20% band of kids are average or unclassifiable. That freaks parents out. Nobody wants an unclassifiable child. It means your child's classmates don't say she's popular, but they don't say she's unpopular. They don't classify her, they leave her be. And I think that makes 80% of kids pretty much friend eligible, and they'll be left alone to make their friendships. Now, some will yearn to be higher up the social ladder, but they are still friend eligible and they've got friendship possibilities. About 20% of kids are struggling, or have struggled, or struggling one time. Or shy and brilliant kids. I believe shyness is an inborn trait. It's one of the enduring traits in human life, as Jerome Kagan taught me many years ago. First child psychology course I ever took. Jerome Kagan. That's a hell of a start, isn't it? And shy and brilliant kids often don't have an intellectual match, or they're retiring and reserved. But usually by the end of 5th grade, they've got a friend. So you got a friend, you're good, in my book. 15% of kids are struggling. 5% because they're controversial. They have annoying habits. ADHD boys, quick temper, impulsive, they blurt out stuff. You know, the 7th grade teacher is on a Monday giving out a homework assignment. Everybody in class recognizes that this poor, befuddled, middle-aged person is giving out the same assignment that she gave out Thursday. And if we just keep quiet. Do you remember this in school? Right? And then there's one kid who goes, but Miss So, you gave this to us. Oh, yeah. Can't that kid shut up? But he can't, he's verbally impulsive. No, I asked a group of 4th graders once, I said, what would make you controversial? And a girl said, if you pick your nose and eat your boogers. I thought, that's true. You got to clean up your act. And adults need to help kids who are controversial to work on their controversial behaviors, or help them with their hygiene problems, because you're sunk. You're sunk socially. And then there are 10% of kids who are rejected. And rejected kids come in 2 flavors. Rejected submissive, the kids who like a turtle, they've had some hurt, some pain, and they've just pulled in. Some of them are very anxious. Some of them are on their way to being depressed. And we need therapeutically to get to those kids. And then the most problematic group, the kids that all of us hated in elementary school, the rejected aggressive kids, the provocative kids, the kids that always seemed to needle the class, bring everybody down, everybody hated them, but everybody felt justified because they were so provocative. And Dan Olweus is the father of all anti-bullying in the world, the Swedish psychologist who wrote the foundational book, Bullying School. That's the basis for every anti-bullying curriculum in the United States, Dan Olweus' work. He calls them provocative victims or victim bullies. And parents sometimes think that's a true bully because they hear about misbehavior or this kid attacking another kid. We had a boy in our neighborhood who was very vulnerable, and I watched my daughter when she was younger with a whole group of kids in the neighborhood just to torture this kid in the neighborhood until he went after him. It was like bear baiting watching it. And then he was swinging wildly and swearing, and my daughter came in and said, so-and-so, he's crazy. And I said, he wasn't crazy till you all started, bear baiting him. Till you were, and it's not attractive to see your own child do that, right? Have none of your children ever done that? See, one of the assumptions today is that all of our children are angels, and that that other children are teasing and bullying our children. And so, Kate, you come home one day. If you don't mind my using, you have to do this as a dialogue. But you don't get any part in the dialogue. I do both parts of the dialogue. It's really a monologue, but I make it look like a dialogue. So you're my third grade daughter, and you come home and you look sad, and I say, how was school? And you start to brim with tears, and you say, not that good, Molly was mean to me. And I say, really, what'd she do? And then you describe something, which sounds mean and intentional. It wasn't an accident. And I say, sweetie, I'm so sorry. She shouldn't have done that. That was mean. And then you run off feeling better, right? But not me. No, I'm in the kitchen. I'm thinking, I never liked Molly. And I never thought her parents had good values. So I get 2 generations right away. Then you come home the next day, Kate looking quite reasonable. But my tone is now elevated. And I say, how was school today? And you say, fine, okay. And I say, well, how were things with Molly? And you look confused. Because, in fact, that was yesterday. Today's today, right? You're not even thinking about Molly. Or maybe you had a good day with Molly. But you want to reserve the right to have your mother's empathy in the future. We all want to be able to complain, don't we? I mean, how many of you come home to your partner, your spouse, whoever it is in your life, and you come home, how many of you come in and somebody says, how was your day? How many of you say, well, come to think of it, it was a triumph, really, from beginning to end. Most of us rummage around and find the things that went badly so that we can get a little sympathy, right? And the people love us, and kids do that. So you say, well, she doesn't get along that well with anybody, Mom, right? And then you run off. You say something kind of vague and equivocal, and you run off. But I'm on it. I'm thinking, really? I wonder if people know about the Molly problem. I should be talking to some other moms. Should I call the teacher? Well, I'll call my friend and ask if I can call the teacher, right? And we'll get this going. And then the third day you come home looking fine, but by that time I'm foaming at the mouth. I say, how are things with Molly? And you think, well, this is a crazy woman. We have to feed her red meat. And children will do that. In the book, we call this interviewing for pain. It makes a parent feel really on the job. But it skews the story because, Kate, now you're going to get a role here. Will you ever tell me if you were mean back to Molly? No. Never? No. You're never going to say to me, don't worry, Mom, I took care of Molly? I gossiped viciously about her with some people. We excluded her at lunch. It was deeply satisfying. consider the matter closed. Right? But you know, this is what teachers tell me over and over and over again. I had a school in town give me a 6-page, single-spaced letter from a father about his child being bullied by another child. And it was, a searing indictment. You know, based on a couple of small things. But once the dad was on it, he was going to protect his child. And it was way over the top. It was way over the top, and it wasn't child-sized anymore. It was a federal case. Now, I do not want you to walk out here saying Michael Thompson makes light of bullying, it's a trivial matter, blah, blah, blah. No. I know that there is real bullying, and I know it can be traumatic, and I know that there are kids in school who are enormously vulnerable. I'm a school psychologist, and I've been in schools, and I've seen kids who really had a sustained hard time. But we have to keep both things in mind, that what kids are trying to do is make friendships, to make the connection, to find someone who will stand up for them. Because in the end, if your child is getting teased, or teased in a way that's sort of gateway behaviors to bullying, what she should do is go stand with a friend. And the friend says, you know, if you're a 7th grade girl and they're hard on you, you go to your friend, and your friend says, don't pay any attention to them. They're stuck up. And then she uses the magic B word. And you think, that is so true. And my friend said it about my enemies, and I'm made whole, right? And boys do that for each other. They're jocks, they're idiots, they're assholes, right? And you think, yeah, that is so true. And my friend said it. And my wounds are bandaged in the moment by my friend. Much more effective, 90% of the time. So schools have a role in creating a culture of tolerance and acceptance and inclusion. I don't believe teachers should ever let the work groups in the class be your friends. You know, you choose your friends. No, I think social engineering in the classroom. I had a math teacher said she had 24 kids in her class, and she was always making work in groups, typically 6 groups. So she had numbers for the groups, you know, 4 1s, 4 2s, 4 3s, 4 4s, and she would have them stacked up, and then she notices that her middle school girls were trying to stagger their arrival so that they were all in group 2, you know. And she said, the moment I spot that, I always smile, take the cards and shuffle them. What you learn in my math class is everybody works with everybody, and random numbers rule. There's a math lesson and a human lesson. But kids can be made to feel part of a class and part of a school. So there are many societies, and they can include sometimes kids with even quite significant disabilities. But not all. Not all children can be included. There are kids who, because they're on the spectrum, simply don't pick up the information that other kids have. But we do have a role in that inclusion. You know, I go to schools where children say to me, well, I'll name the school. It's many years ago, but I was at the Dalton School in New York, wonderful progressive independent school in New York. And I did my assembly with the middle schoolers. And a 6th grade boy came up to me and he said, Dr. Thompson, at the end of the year last year, some parents gave a party, about 100 kids in a class at Dalton. He said they gave a party at the end of 5th grade year, the parents of this girl, and they invited 75 of the kids and left 25 out. And I was one of the ones who wasn't invited. And I thought, really, these parents, I mean, if you're insane enough to give a party for 75, what's 100, right? And yet they must have allowed their 5th grade daughter to include 75 and exclude 25. And I always want there to be more kids on a Monday who weren't invited to the party than there were. I want all one gender. And we do have a role here. The school has a role in creating tolerance and inclusion, but parents, don't go back to middle school. Do not go back to middle school. Once was enough. Truly. It was a nightmare, but we can't lessen or really seriously diminish some of the things that kids have to learn. So I was in Newton and I finished my talk and a woman said to me, in the Q&A, and I'm gonna stop with this story because we need time for Q&A. But she said, Dr. Thompson, I wanna ask you a question, but I don't think you're gonna think it's bullying. I said, well, try me. And she said, well, my 6th grade daughter wants to join this group of popular girls and she's always asking them and they're always saying no and it's breaking her heart. And of course, the mother's tone of voice told me it was breaking her heart too. And I said, well, let me ask you some questions. Is this group of popular girls after your daughter? Are they criticizing her clothes? Are they gossiping about her? No, no. Are they spreading rumors? Are they matching her in romantic pairings with dorky boys? Which just, that's how middle schoolers drive each other bananas. And she said, no, no. And I said, is the direction always your daughter going to them? And she said, yes, she asked them every day. And I said, it's not bullying. And the mom said, why not? Now, why did she want it to be bullying? She wanted to be bullying so it would be an official problem in which adults could then be authorized to enter and try and solve. Is there anybody in this room, we all went to middle school, is there anybody in this room who thinks there's any adult on earth who can make that group of girls open up and accept this girl? No. We all know that, because actually, that's what we learned in middle school. That's how we know, right? I sometimes say to audiences, you know, I really admire and think Julia Roberts is beautiful, but I don't call her to ask her, how? Why don't I call Julia Roberts? Besides the fact I'm married. Why don't I call Julia Roberts? She's going to say no, right? And one of the things you learn in middle school is not to chase the people who are not interested in you, right? That is actually a lesson. We don't want to graduate babies out of 8th grade because they're going to need some social skills in high school. And they're not interested in talking to us about it, not after 4th grade, because a memo has gone out. In every school in the world, in late 3rd grade, there's a memo that goes out, says, if you run to adults too much to report on what children are doing, we will call you a tattletale. And in March, I learned the Romanian name for tattletale, and last fall when I was in Norway, I learned 2 Norwegian words for tattletale. They're Chinese words and Indonesian words. There's a word for tattletale. And it comes down to the same developmental point, because kids do require one another to manage their own social lives. And some of our kids, 15%, are at risk, and they need counseling, and they need individual help, and they may need a school counselor to run friendship groups. I was down in Virginia once, Virginia Beach, Virginia, at a school, and the counselor had taken all of the bottom of the heap kids in 6th and 7th grade and put together lunch groups for them. And she allowed me to, she had a boys group, a 6th grade boys group, and a 7th grade boys group, and a 6th grade girls group in 7th grade. And she had leavened the mix with some really middle of the pack, altruistic, good-hearted kids. Said for them it would be a leadership opportunity. So she allowed me to interview the boys, and I interviewed this boy, and I said, so why'd Ms. Pike put you in her lunchtime group? He said, because we had no friends. And I said, and did the group make a difference? He said, yeah, now we have friends. I sometimes love interviewing boys, because they... Over and out. Interview over. Yeah, we can help some, but we ought to butt out. We ought to butt out of most of the social lives of our children. Just listen. Just listen. But remember this, a 5th grade girl at Stratton said this, do you like talking, I asked her, do you like talking to grown-ups about your social life? She said, no. All the kids were going, no. I said, why not? She said, Well, I mean, if you talk to your mom, she'll call somebody else. And then that mom will tell her child, and then they'll really hate you. Right? Do you remember that? So I'm always asking parents who want to intervene, would you have wanted your mother to do that for you? That's my acid test question. I'm going to stop with that. Yeah? And if I'm picking on moms, it's because there are way more moms in here to pick on. But dads are usually monitoring the athletic careers, so they aren't able to keep up with the friendships in the way they should. Questions? Only gender in school. Who said that?